I will remember this the next time I speak at a school. That's cool. All right. Thank you for showing me that. That's cool. All right, so here it is. Here it is. So does anybody have a question? If you have a question, please, you have that chance now.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book in the whole wide world is the Bible, Bible for me. And in this book, it's very powerful. And some people think it's just a book, but I actually have a pair of shoes in my closet just in case God can do something with my legs. I know He can. I've prayed for arms and legs before, but I realized that if He wanted to use me better this way, then I could see more people in heaven. Seeing more people in heaven is better than having arms and legs for 90 years. It's going to give me arthritis later on anyway. So this book says that there's a greater plan for my life. And the reason why I have a pair of shoes in my closet is because I have seen blind people seeing, deaf people hearing right in front of my eyes. There's power here. And that, to me, my faith in God is actually the foundation of everything I've shared. So that's why it's the Bible. Thank you for your question. Appreciate it. Next question? Yes?
How did you teach yourself to walk?
That's a really good question. I don't know, I don't remember it. But my mom says that I was rolling around, and she would roll me around to develop my six-pack as a 6-year-old, and just roll me around, and then eventually I could have strength to sort of sit against something, and I'm like, hey, what's up? You know? And then from there I could sort of walk and sometimes fall. The way that I started swimming as well is my dad, when I was 18 months old, he would put his hand under my head and keep me afloat. And then at 18 months old, he moved his hand away and he said I cried like a baby. And, because I was. And then I learned how to actually float, and I learned how to swim at age 6. The first wheelchair was 2.5 years old, so haven't got a license yet, but it's all good. Yes, sir. You know what, that's a really good question. I have played some basketball here and there. There was like this really cool, modified little, bye, I love you, little balloon thing. It was like sort of basketball and stuff. But I actually played hockey. I grabbed the stick with my shoulder and stuff. I know you guys probably know it's hockey, but I play soccer. Soccer is my favorite, and fishing. I can fish all by myself. I just need someone to put the bait on the hook. And apart from that, I can do pretty much everything else, except get the fish off the hook when I do that. So yeah, I love sports, and swimming, golfing, fishing, skydiving, scuba diving, horseback riding, surfing. I made it on a professional e-magazine of surfing. It was really funny. I was on Hawaii, beach, Waikiki, and the whole beach was looking at me like this. And they're like, look at that guy, oh my gosh. And so I'm like on my longboard and stuff, and I got this pile of towels, and I could use the pile of towels to use my head to get up just like I use here. And finally, after 15 tries, I got up, and I'm like, yes! And the whole beach goes wild, yeah! Rock on! And I'm like, what now? I had no idea, and it was pretty funny. But, I'm going to actually ask you, do you want to continue on questions or just hug as many people as I can, given the time given? And it's not because of your school that I have to go. It's because I have a phone call that I cannot miss. And I'm sorry for that. Otherwise, I would have stayed here and I have to get back to Westlake by 4:15. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm busy. But I love you, and I hope you know that, okay? I did come here. You know I love you? Great, great, great. All right. Couple more questions. All right. Yes, sir?
Are there days or moments where you still find yourself feeling sorry for yourself or angry? Or have you sort of trained your mind out of that? And if so, how do you deal with those moments of either anger or sort of, self-pity?
Yep, fantastic question. The question was, do I still find myself in moments where I do feel angry or depressed, or is it because I trained my mind enough to have an attitude and all that sort of thing? If I do have anger or depression, then how do I deal with it? That was the question. Now, I want you to understand that in my next book that's coming out in September this year, the first chapter is how I had a crash. Everybody say crash.
Crash.
I had a crash in January 2011 and not many people knew about it. And I'm writing about it. And I burnt out big time. And my wife and I, we were dating for 4 months at that time, and her and I were crying on my living room floor for 2 weeks straight. And I've never cried like that in my life. Something very tragic happened in my life at that time. It was very, very big at the end of a lot. And for me, in my mind, how did I get through that? It was because of people around me who supported me, who loved me. I have a fantastic board of directors on my non-profit organization, Life Without Limbs. And they were encouraging me. My staff were encouraging me, my friends, my family. And of course my wife. But I still knew that there was pain that would take time to get through. So for me, with prayer and reminding myself of knowing, okay, what was the last valley I've been to? Okay, remember the last valley you've been through. That was the biggest thing that you went through at that time. Now it seems like a bigger valley. I want you to know that the valleys get deeper, but the mountains get higher. And then you grow in between those. So you get taller and taller through that. So I'm not a superhero. I don't wake up every morning and go, I'm ready for the day. Hi, everybody. No. So I just want you to know, I'm just like you. I want you to know that. But there is a stage in my life where I really didn't care what people thought of me, and that took time. It takes time to get out of depression. It takes time. So give yourself some credit, give yourself some time. Does that make sense? Awesome. I'm going to do 2 more questions. There's 2 hands that I see raised. You, sir, in the red shirt.
Okay. How was school for you?
School for me was very difficult, only because of a couple factors. Obviously, comparing myself to everybody else. My brother and my sister were actually born with arms and legs. And so sometimes I would have to talk to the teacher while the rest of the students are doing something that I couldn't do. Now, I did as much as I could with them, so like when they're riding their bicycles at school, I'm actually riding my skateboard, doing all sorts of stuff like that, which is pretty fun. But there were things that I couldn't do, and that was the most difficult thing, comparing myself to everyone and then believing that I wasn't good enough. But I was very thankful to be actually the very first kid with special needs who was actually allowed to go to a mainstream school. In 1989, the government of Australia used my life as an example that it's actually possible for people in wheelchairs to go to a mainstream school. And so that was a big thing, and I was on TV and blah, blah, blah for that. And so that's what happened. And it was difficult at times, but because of the moving geographically of my family, just continuing to move from Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast, LA for 3 months. I lived here in '94 for 3 months. I was in grade 6, went back to Gold Coast, Australia. It was difficult because every time I went to a new school, I had to make new friends. And that was and so just want you to know you have to be your best friend through it all. Thank you for your question. Very last question. Yes, sir.
Is it possible for you to get prosthetic limbs?
Very good question. Is it possible for me to get prosthetic limbs? At age 6 in 1988, we flew from Australia to Toronto, Canada, who just came out with these robotic limbs. Now, we realized that even though I had a pretty good whole structure, I wasn't strong enough to have robotic legs. But they gave me robotic arms. And they had like 3 buttons on each shoulder, and each button gave a different function to these robotic hands and arms. Problem though was I was 25 pounds heavy when I was 10 years old, and each arm weighed about 6.5 pounds. And so it was very heavy. And any weight that's on my back, I actually get more back pain than the average person. Even if I have a very thick coat on, my back starts to hurt. So I've got a huge back problem. Anyone into science, I've got a spherix and a scoliosis. Maybe you've never heard of a spherix. But spherix was a hollowing of my spine. But for for some medical unexplainable reason, my hole has actually closed up, but I still have a 55-degree curve in my back and a rotation of my spine. So I actually have to start working out and keep my back straight, because the doctors say that if I don't, I'll end up like this. So I don't want to end up like this and talk to you like this. So even I have to make sure that I, don't eat Kentucky Fried Chicken every day and so on. You guys like Kentucky Fried Chicken? Me too. I don't know what to do. We do have a couple questions, or do you just want to